for having us.
This feels very casual.
Yeah.
We're going to affect a casual atmosphere this morning.
So Volkswagen has had Deutsch LA as our agency of record going on our 6th year. So when it came time to create a new VW.com, we started thinking about how can we disrupt the industry but still try to gain some market share. So Volkswagen in the US hovers right around 3% market share. Globally, we hover between the first and second manufacturer in the world. So what we were given was basically permission in the US to go rogue. For the past 5 years, we've been on a global platform with very little customization for the US shopper. So with that kind of flexibility came a very real German mandate to create a reusable website. So what we created something that is now the industry or the standard rollout for every other market in the world. What we'll take you through is the product that we created, and then normally when we would walk off the stage and say, you're welcome, we created this great product, we're going to go into some of the challenges and some of the solutions that we did together to overcome what are some very typical hurdles in creating an enterprise-wide redesign. So the center of the website is a product called Find a Match. It is taking cues from very common e-commerce sites to make shopping for a car very easy. And so one of those very used and high entry point commerce sites is a dating website. And so we thought, why not take very comfortable shopping techniques such as looking for your mate? You know, I want someone who likes whiskey and long walks on the beach. Let's try to use that to help them find a car. So you could look for a red vehicle that has a sunroof and a manual transmission.
There's also I think it's an emotional but very rational decision, which is a bit like buying a car. That it's not as simple as which like napkin you're gonna buy. It's sort of, again, there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in it too. And that's where that idea of sort of the Match.com of car shopping came in.
Yeah, it was interesting when we wrote the brief for this project. It was essentially create a 12-page website that is shareable. And so it's interesting because once we started getting into this Find a Match concept, the creative prowess was kind of unending. So the ways that you could describe a roomy backseat and a powerful gear shifter started getting a little risque with the Find a Match theme. But eventually
we pushed the metaphor
back.
Probably a little too far at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I'm just going to quickly take you through kind of, as John mentioned, the new site is a shopping tool that matches you to real inventory near you. Traditionally, car websites have been love the car and then you hope to find the car. And so as you're looking at love the car, most automotive websites look very similar. So you could almost swap out Toyota, Honda, Ford logo in the top left, and you'd get pretty much the same experience, which is a little bit of a glorified brochure. Really glossy photos. You can almost be guaranteed that the car that you get on the lot is not going to look like the car that's on the website. But you also then have to find the car. Most automotive websites will only show you the cars at your local dealer. As the Zumba conversation was going, we work for our dealers. And so there was a lot of kind of industry rule breaking to enable a customer to transparently find the car that they needed. Traditionally, people have gone to third-party websites such as cars.com to look for a vehicle. Cars is promoting a transparent shopping experience. They're not necessarily dealer specific. But what we started contending with was not just expectations from third-party websites, but really expectations that customers have from sites like Uber, removing that transaction headache. Websites like Tread, which is a home delivery of a test drive, and then Tesla, which is completely eliminating any sort of headache that you would contend with in interacting with a dealer. So we took these kind of e-commerce shopping trends and then some of the expectations that our customers have from third-party websites and created the ability to love the car and find the car, which is the Match.com of car shopping. So again, this is normally when we would exit stage left. Yes. Yeah. The results were highly successful. So we could take you through some of the actual metrics, such as nearly 40% decrease in bounce rate. We had almost a 200% increase in find a dealer site handoffs, 30% increase in conversion rates. But we also were happy to see industry recognition. So It was almost a relief and aha moment when we were able to see that the design and the technology industries were really embracing this new sort of approach to not just have something that is informative, but it's also useful.
Yeah, and not to be like suck-uppy, but I think actually our favorite piece of press we got was from Digiday that called it the Tinder of car shopping, which was actually way cooler than our internal sort of PR headline. But I think the key is like it's working, and it's working a lot better than the previous piece. But I think one of the things that's interesting for us is to think about, so sometimes people be like, we launched this thing and it's awesome and it's selling a bunch of cars and we've won a couple of awards and I hope we win a bunch more. But you sound sort of like a smug bastard when you do that. And I think it's interesting to think about like what can go wrong. And what's kind of wild about this at a previous agency, I had the opportunity to work on the predecessor, this global replatforming with VW. And it was an unmitigated disaster, which is getting significantly better now. Like actually it's doing like, but it was supposed to be like 3 years and rolled out in every country. It's been 7 years and it's in 12 countries. So it was just tough. But it made me think about what went wrong there, and especially like what went wrong from the agency side, because I think that sort of blame is a little bit boring. So I want to talk about how we burned it all down before I have notes. So I think what's interesting is that is it really, unless there's like a solar flare or somebody like kicks the plug out of the server, usually the things that go wrong are human problems, and therefore I think like there are some predictable arcs and themes, and I think a relationship metaphor is an interesting way to think about how you start off with something like this, a huge project that's going to change the industry, and you end up like splitting up your CDs at the end. So initially, like the kickoff, it's super flirty, it's really fun. There's lots of high-minded statements. We're going to change the world. They might be the one. So excited. And there's like a couple of worries, right? Like you find a Whitney Houston album in their collection, but you're like, you know what? Like fuck it, man. Let's just jump in, and we'll build the shark cage right after we chum the water. And then, so you get into it, you have your first big creative presentation, everyone's like sort of excited. But there's the first time, right? Like the first time somebody says like, listen, I know this doesn't make sense, but we just have to do it. And you look them right in the eye, in the back of your head, you're like, there's like $15 million on the line here. Like this is my yacht we're talking about. And you on the agency side, yeah, my yacht's fantastic. You make a promise that you probably can't keep, right? You're like, no, this will be totally personalized for everybody in the world in every language. And there, like, that first thing happens, right? There's some discussion with, like, creative and technology, and you get that first twinge of discouragement where you're like, man, like, maybe this isn't going to be all that we thought it's going to be. Then sort of, discouragement at some juncture turns into vengeance, and when you get tired of vengeance, sort of cue ennui. This is the point at which, like, the effort to maintain the relationship, if we may come back to our metaphor, the effort to lie with this person tonight becomes greater than the satisfaction you would realize from that Congress. And you're just like, you know what, man, fuck it. Just forget it. We're just gonna do whatever you asked. Like, yeah, I'll totally make you casserole for dinner, or I'll totally, like whatever, we'll go see that movie. And you sort of lose the volition. In a project, this is where you start stacking change orders on change orders on change orders and being like, yeah, we can totally do that for you. It's gonna cost you $1 million and take an extra month and a half, so enjoy.
And I think the interesting kind of team dynamic here is Volkswagen America has worked with Deutsch LA going on our 6th year now. So we have a lot of trust. They are truly our partner. The difference is that Volkswagen Global does not have an agency of record. So for almost every individual project, they bid out. And so that kind of long-standing trust is non-existent. So while we work with Deutsch as just an extension of our team, best buds, Volkswagen Global is a little less trusting. And so their expectation is that you have a little bit of like a foot on throat mentality, and you're really pushing and questioning and judging every minor thing.
Yeah.
So read that into a 12-month project that was meant to launch with about 50% of our feature set as our MVP, and then all of a sudden that was not acceptable.
Yeah.
So it was do this all in the same amount of time and the same cost.
So the next stage in this progression, I think, is this. Deadlines and budgets blow by. Like sometimes something launches, but usually like it kind of sucks. You're like, maybe we launched, but no one's super happy with it. Everybody feels like they kind of got hosed. And then you move on to the next thing. So again, for me personally, what I feel like like I could have done a lot better in that previous one. First of all, is like that we were all in this position where it was okay to let it not be amazing. To Paige's point, like it was a project with a big client and an important one, but it was a project, and we had 75 other projects. So we found excuses to be able to let it fail or let it not be perfect. We also found like good reasons to blame other people, and I think especially when you're working in a cross-cultural environment, and I mean that like between the U.S. and Japan or U.S. and Germany, it's easy to blame cultural differences for why something didn't work. You're like, well, they just don't understand how we do things. But then like lastly, we didn't always apply the energy to just fix it. Like you can almost always fix it, or you should end it there. So it's sort of like we went to bed angry, and at the end, like what came out, it was okay, but it wasn't great, and nobody was super proud of it. Previously, this one's awesome. So now I want to talk about what I think we did differently this time that hopefully is helpful for you guys. So first of all, the biggest thing is, like personally, a chunk of us this is like for some of us at Deutsche LA, this is our third VW.com. So we'd had some chances to screw it up before like the good people of IPG were paying us. But that's not really a solution, that's kind of a hope. You're like, oh, just go fuck it up a couple times and then you're gonna be awesome at it. So I wanna talk about what our hypotheses are for why this one went better. And there are three. The first is sort of the Cortez. You get there, and this is not the nicest metaphor because then you sort of spread syphilis and death. But like essentially none of us were allowed to fail. Like Paige's job was riding on this. My career was certainly riding on this. It is Deutsche LA's biggest, most important client. It is, and not our longest standing, but certainly one of our longest standing. So all of us essentially were not in a position where we could fail. There was no going back. I would have been working at Walmart. So
I think also yesterday when we were doing the prototyping exercise, there was a comment of you need to all be in it together. There were 25 folks who kicked this off at a Holiday Inn in Germany about a year and a half ago. And it really was the executives who would be stakeholdering this project, and then all the way down to the people who would actually be leading the technology, creative, and execution of it. And so from the beginning, it was not just buy-in, but it was responsibility. So we had these champions, and then we had these people who had to stick their necks on the line for it.
Yep. Next, I think, is that my CEO says that there's no substitute for proximity and consumption of alcohol. So every 6 or 8 weeks, this whole sort of key project team, the leads across this, and again, the leads were doing work on this, all got together in either Wolfsburg, in DC, or LA, and essentially we're locked in a room for a week to review what we'd done. So we ran it in kind of a hybrid. It wasn't really agile, but it wasn't really waterfall either. But so again, every 6 or 8 weeks, we're all getting together and all looking through everything. And essentially like a bunch of Germans, a bunch of clients, a bunch of agency people are signing off and saying like, yep, we've done what we said we were gonna do, and we moved on. And then we all went out and drank a bunch of beer together. So there was trust, there were faces, like there was not like some guy named Sven who can call and sweat me. Like I know him, he knows me, and we're gonna have to see each other in like 5 or 6 weeks, so you can't be a complete dick.
Yeah, I think getting everyone together was also not just kind of the humane aspect of being able to look at someone and be like, I don't hate you.
It wasn't strictly humane, but
not strictly humane. But a lot of it was also trying to find the benefit of people's, we're not going to call them personality flaws, but Germans are very controlling. They have an expectation that you will be documenting what could be one annotated wireframe into a 40-page document. And so we were able to find these kind of common threads and leverage them, as opposed to just blaming someone's really kind of OCD documentation behavior.
Paige, that's a beautiful segue into our last point.
Okay.
Which I think is that, and I think, so again, in my experience working across some global exercises, there've been a lot of times where you can just say like all these cultural differences, whether it's again working with folks in China or Japan or Germany, which is my local experience, they're just different and like didn't understand what we're trying to do. So what I thought about, there's a huge amount of potential energy like tied up in these big cultural traditions and tendencies. And if you can tap into it, it's just kind of there to be used if you can turn it to your advantage. So I think we sort of had the like German project management and detail, which can be a huge pain in the ass, but can also be really, really useful. The sort of like American, entrepreneurialism and like let's just go. We feel like we can do it. We had a Swiss guy who just like everything had to be perfect, and Americans are idiots. But again, we turned this all to our purpose, and I think it helped us kind of use the entire team in such a way that we got kind of the best out of everybody. And at the end of the day, launched on time, on budget, and after a couple of like interesting fits and starts at the beginning, like we took away a bunch of lead buttons, which was not a killer idea as it turns out. Like got something that is really working well and will be rolled out around the world.
Yeah, it was interesting because in the course of a project, as John mentioned, we kind of kicked this off as just being a US product, and so we staffed for that. And then somewhere around, I'm going to say month 3 of 12, there was this arbitrary 75% reusability requirement that was thrown in.
Yeah,
totally made that up. And so all of a sudden we started being held to it, and documentation erupted. So somewhere around month 9 of 12, every executive above me left the company who had been supporting the project. So all of a sudden you're pushing this very innovative, groundbreaking, potentially pissing off dealer type product, and every person who has said, yes, now's the time for Volkswagen to embrace this, pieced out. And so without having...
Some not of their own volition.
That's right,
Yeah.
that's right. So if we hadn't had all that documentation, we wouldn't have had that leg to stand on.
Yeah.
So there were some kind of shining silver moments of relief.
Yeah, you have to show my last slide because I love the picture.
Okay.
That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We do not have enough time for questions, but thank you
Yeah.
to both of you. We really appreciate it.